In March of 2021, Kanye West was worth $6.6 billion. Let that number sit with you for a moment. $6.6 billion. That's more than the annual GDP of countries like Monaco, Liechtenstein, and the Seychelles. That's enough money to buy every single team in the NFL and still have change left over. But here's where it gets interesting. Just 5 years earlier, in February 2016, this same man was on Twitter, publicly begging Mark Zuckerberg for a $1 billion investment. And I mean begging. He wrote, quote, "Mark Zuckerberg invest $1 billion into Kanye West ideas," end quote. He even tagged Larry Page, Google's co-founder, writing, "Hey Larry Page, I'm down for your help too." At that moment, Kanye West claimed he was $53 million in debt. The Facebook founder never responded, neither did Larry Page. And yet, just 5 years later, Kanye West was worth more than both of their annual salaries combined. So the question becomes, how? How does a rapper, someone who makes music for a living, become richer than virtually every professional athlete on the planet? Richer than LeBron James, richer than Tom Brady, richer than Tiger Woods, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Roger Federer combined? Here's the answer, and it's probably not what you'd expect. Kanye West didn't get rich from music. He got rich because he understood something that most entertainers never figure out: the difference between getting paid and owning what you create. This is the story of how a middle-class kid from Chicago, rejected by every record label, nearly killed in a car crash, told repeatedly that he'd never make it as a rapper, transformed himself into the highest-earning musician in history. This isn't just a story about hip-hop. This is a master class in turning yourself into a billion-dollar brand. Kanye Omari West was born on June 8, 1977, in Atlanta, Georgia. His father, Ray West, was a former Black Panther and one of the first black photojournalists at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. His mother, Donda Williams, was an English professor who would eventually become the chair of the English department at Chicago State University. They divorced when Kanye was 3 years old. After the split, Donda took her son to Chicago, settling in the South Shore neighborhood. And this detail matters because Kanye didn't grow up in the projects. He didn't grow up surrounded by gang violence or drug dealing. He grew up in a middle-class home, raised by a single mother who was a college professor. There were books everywhere, intellectual conversation at the dinner table, an emphasis on education that would later make his album title, The College Dropout, all the more ironic. Even as a kid, Kanye showed artistic ability. He won talent shows. He drew constantly, and somewhere around age 13, he discovered something that would change the entire trajectory of his life: music production software. He started making beats in his bedroom, simple stuff at first. But there was something there, a musicality, an ear for samples, a sense of rhythm that couldn't be taught. His mentor during these early years was a Chicago producer named No ID, real name Dion Wilson. No ID would later be called the godfather of Chicago hip-hop. He taught Kanye the fundamentals of sampling, of chopping up old soul records and reassembling them into something new. Kanye was obsessive. He would stay up all night tweaking a single drum pattern. He studied records from the 70s, Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye, the Isley Brothers, and learned how to extract the emotional core of a song and transplant it into a hip-hop beat. When Kanye was 10, something unusual happened. His mother, through a Fulbright exchange program, was invited to teach English at Nanjing University in China. So for an entire year, young Kanye lived in China with his mother, one of the only black kids in his school. He later said this experience taught him how it felt to be different, to be an outsider, to have to prove himself in a room where nobody expected anything from him. That feeling would become his fuel. After graduating from high school, Kanye briefly attended Chicago State University, where his mother taught. But his heart wasn't in academics, it was in music. He dropped out. His mother was initially devastated. This was a woman who had built her entire life around education, who had earned a doctorate from Auburn University, who believed college was the pathway to success. But Donda West was also smart enough to recognize something special in her son. As she would later write in her memoir, "It was drummed into my head that college is the ticket to a good life. But some career goals don't require college. For Kanye to make an album called The College Dropout, it was more about having the guts to embrace who you are, rather than following the path society has carved out for you." So she let him chase his dream. More than that, she supported him. She drove him to recording sessions. She became his first manager. She believed in him when nobody else did. There's a story that captures their relationship perfectly. When Kanye was struggling to get signed, when label after label was rejecting him, Donda drove him from Chicago to Newark, New Jersey in a rented U-Haul van. They were delivering beats to a producer. It was hundreds of miles of driving for what might have been nothing. But she did it. She believed in him that much. Years later, Kanye would immortalize this moment in his song, "Touch the Sky," thanking his mother for always supporting him during the lean times. And make no mistake, in those early years, almost nobody believed in him. Kanye spent the late 1990s grinding. He made beats for local Chicago artists. His first official production credits came at age 19, when he produced 8 tracks for a Chicago rapper named Grav. He got paid almost nothing. He worked as a ghost producer for Derek Angeletti, also known as D-Dot, at Bad Boy Records. Because of his contract with D-Dot, he couldn't release his own music, so he formed a group called the Go-Getters with other Chicago rappers, and they put out an album called World Record Holders in 1999. It went nowhere. But Kanye kept working. He produced a track for Foxy Brown's album China Doll in 1999, the second hip-hop album by a female rapper to debut at #1 on the Billboard 200. He was building a reputation, slowly, beat by beat. But he was still making $5,000 here, $10,000 there, scraping by. And then he got a call that would change everything. In the year 2000, Kanye West began producing for Rockefeller Records. Now, if you don't know hip-hop history, let me explain why this matters. Rockefeller was the label. It was founded by Jay-Z, Damon Dash, and Kareem Burke in 1995, and by the early 2000s, it was the most influential force in hip-hop. Getting in the door at Rockefeller was like getting invited to the Medici court during the Renaissance. It was where the action was, where careers were made, where legends were born. But Kanye wasn't invited as an artist. He was brought in as a producer, a beat maker, someone to work behind the scenes. And here's where Kanye's story takes a legendary turn. In 2001, Jay-Z released The Blueprint. It would become one of the most celebrated hip-hop albums of all time. Rolling Stone would later rank it among the 50 greatest albums ever made. Kanye produced 4 tracks on that album, including the lead single, Izzo, H-O-V-A. That song went everywhere. It dominated radio. It became the anthem of the summer, and it introduced the world to what critics would call chipmunk soul. Kanye's signature production style of speeding up vocal samples from classic soul records, pitching them higher, and layering them over hard-hitting drums. Suddenly, everybody wanted Kanye West beats. He produced for Ludacris, Alicia Keys, Janet Jackson, Beyoncé. He was the hottest producer in hip-hop. But there was a problem. Kanye didn't just want to make beats, he wanted to rap. And nobody, absolutely nobody, wanted to let him. See, Kanye didn't fit the mold. He wore pink polos and Louis Vuitton backpacks in a room full of Timberlands and throwback jerseys. He rapped about going to college and working at the Gap. He wasn't from the streets. He wasn't hard. He was the suburban son of an English professor. Record labels took meetings with him and passed. Capitol Records got close to signing him, then someone in the company talked the president out of it. Rawkus Records, which would have been the perfect home for his style, turned him down flat. Let me paint a picture of what those meetings looked like. Kanye would walk into a room of executives, men who had signed gangsta rap legends, men who understood the formula of street credibility and hard lyrics, and he'd play them beats about going to school, about God, about working at the Gap. They didn't know what to do with him. His beats were incredible. Everyone admitted that. But a rapper who didn't fit the mold in 2001? That was a risk no one wanted to take. One A&R executive later recalled, "We saw Kanye as a producer. When he started rapping for us, we were like, okay, that's nice. Now get back to making beats." Even Jay-Z, his own mentor, admitted years later that Rockefeller saw Kanye primarily as a producer. Nobody believed he could rap. Kanye kept pushing. He played his demo for anyone who would listen. He begged Dame Dash to let him make an album. He would literally corner people at industry events and make them listen to his verses on the spot. And then, on October 23, 2002, everything changed. It was around 3 a.m. Kanye had been in a California recording studio all night, producing tracks for Beanie Sigel, Petey Crack, and the Black Eyed Peas. He was exhausted, but he got in his rented Lexus and started driving home anyway. Somewhere on the road he fell asleep at the wheel. His car drifted across the center line and crashed head-on into another vehicle. The impact shattered his jaw in 3 places. He also suffered nasal fractures. The other driver, a man named Miguel Villasana, broke both legs, his pelvis, both knees, and his ankle. Kanye was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, the same hospital, he would later note, where Biggie Smalls died. Surgeons performed reconstructive surgery, inserting a metal plate into his chin. His jaw was wired shut. He would have to eat through a straw for 6 weeks. For a rapper, this was potentially a career-ending injury. You can't rap if you can't move your mouth. But here's the thing about Kanye West. 3 days after the accident, while still in the hospital, he was rapping lyrics to his friend Consequence. "I'm thinking to myself," Consequence later recalled, "what the fuck is wrong with you? Why the fuck are you rapping right now?" 2 weeks after the surgery, with his jaw still wired completely shut, Kanye walked into the Record Plant Studios and recorded a song. That song was called Through the Wire. You can hear it in the recording. The words are slightly slurred. There's a thickness to his voice, a difficulty in certain consonants. He was literally rapping through metal wires, holding his shattered jaw together. The song sampled Chaka Khan's Through the Fire, pitched up in his signature chipmunk soul style. And the lyrics told the story of what had just happened to him, the accident, the surgery, the determination to keep going. "I drink a Boost for breakfast and Ensure for dessert," he rapped. "Somebody ordered pancakes. I just sipped the sizzurp." The pain medication between takes, the swelling that distorted his face, the knowledge that his jaw might never heal right, that he might never sound the same, none of it stopped him. Years later, Kanye would reflect on this moment. He said the accident spoke to him. It said, "I am about to hand you the world. Just know at any given time, I can take it away from you." That perspective, the knowledge that everything can vanish in a single instant, became part of Kanye's creative fuel. It made him urgent. It made him appreciate every opportunity. It made him willing to push when others would have rested. When Chaka Khan first heard how Kanye had sampled her song, speeding up her voice, pitching it higher, she wasn't happy. But then she heard the full track. She heard what he was saying. She heard the story of survival and gratitude woven through her melody. She gave her blessing. It was raw, it was real, and it was undeniable. When people at Rockefeller heard the track, something shifted. This wasn't just a producer trying to rap. This was an artist turning his pain into something powerful. Dame Dash finally gave in. He signed Kanye West to Rockefeller Records as a solo artist. Not because they believed in him, but because, as Kanye later put it, they couldn't ignore the noise he was making. On February 10, 2004, Kanye West released The College Dropout. The album sold 441,000 copies in its first week. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. The only thing keeping it from number 1 was Eminem's Encore. Critics were stunned. The New York Times called it 2004's first great hip-hop album. Rolling Stone praised its emotional honesty. Pitchfork called Through the Wire one of the greatest debut singles ever. But what really set The College Dropout apart wasn't the production, though that was masterful. It was what Kanye was saying. In an era when gangsta rap dominated the charts, when every successful rapper had to prove how hard he was, Kanye West was rapping about college, about working retail jobs, about religion, about self-doubt, about his complicated relationship with materialism. On All Falls Down, he rapped about buying expensive things to fill an emotional void. On Jesus Walks, he declared his faith in a genre that typically avoided religion. On Spaceship, he talked about working at the Gap and dealing with racist customers. It was vulnerable, it was introspective, and it resonated with millions of people who had never felt represented by hip-hop before. At the 2005 Grammy Awards, The College Dropout won Best Rap Album. Kanye had done what everyone said was impossible. He'd proven that a middle-class kid from Chicago, a producer with no street credibility, could become one of the biggest rappers in the world. But he was just getting started. In August 2005, he released Late Registration. It sold 860,000 copies in its first week. Another Grammy for Best Rap Album. In September 2007, he released Graduation. And this is where things get really interesting. Graduation came out the same day as 50 Cent's album Curtis. 50 Cent was, at that moment, the undisputed king of gangsta rap. He had sold millions of records. He had the persona, the bullet wounds, the street credibility. 50 Cent was so confident he would outsell Kanye that he publicly declared if Graduation outsold Curtis in the first week, he would retire from music. Graduation sold 957,000 copies. Curtis sold 691,000. It wasn't even close. Now 50 Cent didn't actually retire. That promise turned out to be marketing bluster. But the symbolic significance of that moment can't be overstated. For years, the hip-hop industry had operated on a simple formula. Street credibility sells records. The harder you were, the more units you moved. 50 Cent was the embodiment of that formula, a man who'd survived being shot 9 times, who rapped about drug dealing and violence with unflinching authenticity. And Kanye beat him, not by being harder, not by pretending to be something he wasn't, but by being unapologetically himself, a middle-class kid who rapped about backpacks and Jesus and the anxieties of success. One music journalist wrote at the time, "The sales battle between Curtis and Graduation serves as the final battle, the winner-take-all rumble between the present thug rap and the future alternative rap for rap supremacy." When Kanye won, it changed what was possible in hip-hop. Suddenly, you didn't need a criminal record to sell records. You didn't need to prove you'd been shot. You just needed to be authentic to your own experience, whatever that experience was. Artists like Drake, Kid Cudi, J. Cole, Chance the Rapper, they all trace a direct line back to that September 2007 moment when Kanye proved there was another way. Critics have since called that sales battle the death knell for gangsta rap's dominance, the moment when hip-hop realized it could be something different. As one writer put it, "By choosing Kanye over 50 Cent, we were saying we had gotten bored by gangsta rap. We were ready for something new." By 2007, Kanye West had won multiple Grammys. He had 3 consecutive platinum albums. He was one of the biggest artists in any genre of music. And then, on November 10th, 2007, his world collapsed. Donda West died at age 58. She had undergone cosmetic surgery the day before, liposuction, a tummy tuck, and a breast reduction. She chose to recover at home instead of staying overnight at a medical facility. The next evening she experienced a sore throat, pain in her chest, and chest tightening. She collapsed. By the time she reached the hospital, it was too late. The coroner's report cited coronary artery disease and multiple post-operative factors. The exact cause of death couldn't be definitively determined. Kanye was in London when he got the news. He played a concert in Paris just days later. When he tried to perform "Hey Mama," the song he had written as a tribute to his mother while she was still alive, he broke down on stage. Kanye has never fully recovered from losing Donda. In a 2015 interview with Q Magazine, he said simply, "If I had never moved to L.A., she'd be alive." He blamed himself. He still blames himself. You have to understand what Donda meant to Kanye. She wasn't just his mother, she was his foundation. She was the one who believed in him when the record labels didn't. She was the one who quit her job as a tenured professor to manage his career. She was the voice of reason that tempered his ego while simultaneously nurturing his confidence. In her memoir, she wrote about how she would listen to his early demos and tell him they were as good as anything Michael Jordan had ever done on a basketball court. She gave him permission to believe in himself absolutely. And she was also his tether to reality. Many people who knew Kanye before and after Donda's death say he was never the same. The erratic behavior, the grandiose statements, the inability to filter his thoughts, some of that existed before. But without Donda there to ground him, to pull him back from the edge, those tendencies accelerated. Some have speculated that if Donda were still alive, the events of 2022 would never have happened. That she would have been the voice that said, "Stop, think. You're destroying everything we built together." We'll never know. That loss would haunt his music for the next decade and beyond. It's there in 808s and Heartbreak, his experimental 2008 album, drenched in auto-tuned grief. It's there in his 2021 album, which he named Donda in her honor. But before we talk about where Kanye's journey took him next, there's something crucial to understand about this moment in his career. By 2008, Kanye West was one of the most successful musicians on the planet. His albums had sold tens of millions of copies. He had Grammys, critical acclaim, cultural influence that extended far beyond hip-hop. And yet, he wasn't particularly wealthy. Not wealthy like we're talking about in this video, not billionaire wealthy, not even close. Because here's the dirty secret of the music industry. Most of the money doesn't go to the artists. It goes to record labels, publishers, managers, lawyers, touring companies, merchandise manufacturers. Kanye was making millions, sure, but the music industry has a ceiling. Even the biggest artists, the Drakes, the Taylor Swifts, rarely become billionaires from music alone. Kanye understood this, and he had a plan. Kanye had always been obsessed with fashion. Even in his early career, when every other rapper was wearing baggy jeans and oversized jerseys, Kanye showed up in fitted polos and Louis Vuitton backpacks. He talked about fashion constantly. He studied it. He wanted to design. In 2007, Nike approached him with an unprecedented offer, a signature sneaker. This was massive. Nike had never given a signature shoe to a non-athlete before, ever. Michael Jordan had signature shoes because he was the greatest basketball player of all time. LeBron had signature shoes because he was an NBA superstar. But Kanye West was just a rapper, and Nike was betting he could move product anyway. In April 2009, the Nike Air Yeezy One released in a Zen gray colorway. It sold out instantly. A second colorway dropped in May, then a third in June. Every single one sold out within minutes. The resale market exploded. Shoes that retailed for $215 were selling for $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. The Air Yeezy 2 came in 2012, featuring a more aggressive, animalistic design. Same result: instant sellouts, massive resale prices. From a cultural standpoint, it was a triumph. Kanye had proven that a musician could have the same sneaker cachet as a professional athlete. But from a business standpoint, something was eating at him. Nike wouldn't pay him royalties. See, Nike's position was clear. They gave royalties to athletes. Michael Jordan earned an estimated 5% on every Air Jordan sold, but Kanye wasn't an athlete. He was a celebrity endorser, and celebrity endorsers got flat fees, not percentages. Kanye was furious. "I go to the Garden and play one-on-one," he told interviewers. "I'm a performance athlete. And also, I'm a thinker." He lobbied Nike for years. He wanted what Jordan had, a stake in every shoe that bore his name. Nike offered to donate some of the proceeds to charity instead. It wasn't enough. In November 2013, during an interview on Hot 97, Kanye made an announcement that shocked the sneaker world. "The old me without a daughter would have taken the Nike deal because I just love Nikes so much," he said. "But the new me with a daughter takes the Adidas deal because I have royalties, and I have to provide for my family. Let me explain why the Adidas deal was revolutionary. Nike had offered Kanye a standard celebrity endorsement, flat fees, no ownership, limited creative control. What Adidas offered was something entirely different. First, royalties. Kanye would receive 15% on wholesale prices for every Yeezy product sold. That's roughly $18 on a shoe that wholesales for $120. Second, and this is the crucial part, Kanye retained 100% ownership of the Yeezy brand itself. Let me say that again, because it's the key to understanding how he became a billionaire. Kanye owned Yeezy. Adidas was licensing the brand from him. They manufactured the shoes. They handled marketing and distribution, but the brand, the name, the trademarks, the core intellectual property belonged entirely to Kanye West. Compare this to Michael Jordan. Jordan doesn't own Air Jordan, Nike does. Jordan gets royalties, substantial royalties, but if Nike ever decided to stop making Air Jordans, Jordan would have no recourse. He doesn't own the brand that bears his name. Think about that for a second. Michael Jordan, arguably the most famous athlete in history, doesn't own the most famous sneaker brand in history. Nike does. Jordan earns from it, but Nike controls it. Kanye looked at that arrangement and said, "Not me." He structured his deal differently. He was building equity, not just earning income. Every shoe sold increased the value of something he owned. Every new colorway, every cultural moment, every celebrity spotted in Yeezys. It all added to his asset, not just his bank account. The contract with Adidas also gave Kanye something almost unheard of, complete creative control. He designed the shoes. He approved every colorway. He controlled the release schedule. He decided which celebrities got early pairs. Adidas manufactured and distributed, but the creative vision was entirely Kanye's. This was crucial to the brand's success. Yeezy wasn't a committee decision. It wasn't designed by marketing focus groups. Every shoe had Kanye's fingerprints on it, for better or worse. That authenticity, that singular creative vision, is what made Yeezy feel different from every other sneaker on the market. In February 2015, the Adidas and Yeezy collaboration officially debuted. The Yeezy Boost 750 released in a limited run of just 9,000 pairs. They sold out in 10 minutes. What followed was one of the most remarkable sneaker stories in history. The Yeezy Boost 350 became a cultural phenomenon. The sock-like silhouette, the distinctive sole, the earth-toned colorways, they were everywhere. Celebrities wore them, kids wore them, finance bros and fashion editors wore them. And crucially, you could never just walk into a store and buy them. This was the genius of Yeezy's business model, controlled scarcity. Every release was limited. Every drop created a frenzy. People lined up overnight. They entered online raffles. They paid double, triple, quadruple retail on resale sites. The scarcity wasn't a bug. It was a feature. By keeping supply low, Yeezy maintained cultural heat. The brand never became common. It never became uncool. Every pair felt like a trophy. Think about what this means from a business perspective. Most companies want to sell as many units as possible. They flood the market. They expand distribution. They chase volume. Kanye did the opposite. By constraining supply, he created a phenomenon where the desire for the product always exceeded the availability. People who got Yeezys felt special. They'd achieved something. They were part of an exclusive club. And here's the financial genius of it. When demand exceeds supply, you don't have to discount, ever. Yeezy never went on sale. There were no outlet stores, no end-of-season clearances. Every pair sold at full price, or above, on the resale market. The margins were extraordinary. While most sneaker brands fought price wars and promotional cycles, Yeezy operated in a different universe entirely. A universe where scarcity created value and exclusivity justified premium pricing. Adidas executives later admitted they could have sold 10 times more Yeezys if they'd wanted to. But Kanye understood something they didn't. Flooding the market would destroy the very thing that made Yeezy valuable. By 2019, Yeezy was generating over $1.3 billion in annual revenue. By 2020, that number climbed to $1.7 billion. Kanye's 15% royalty meant he was personally earning roughly $150 million a year, just from sneakers, before taxes. In June 2020, Kanye struck another massive deal. Gap, the struggling American retailer desperate to attract younger consumers, signed a 10-year partnership for something called Yeezy Gap. Analysts estimated the deal could add another $1 billion to Kanye's net worth. Gap projected the line would hit $150 million in sales in its first year and potentially exceed $1 billion annually within 8 years. Combined with his Adidas partnership, his music catalog, his real estate holdings, and a 5% stake in his ex-wife Kim Kardashian's company, Skims, the numbers were staggering. In March 2021, Bloomberg reported that Kanye West's net worth had reached $6.6 billion. $6.6 billion. Let me put that in perspective with some comparisons. At that moment, Kanye West was wealthier than Oprah Winfrey, wealthier than Jay-Z, his former mentor, wealthier than Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and pretty much every celebrity you can name except for a handful of tech entrepreneurs. The Yeezy brand alone was valued at between $3.2 and $4.7 billion by UBS, the Swiss investment bank. To put this in perspective, Kanye had built a sneaker empire that rivaled Air Jordans in just 6 years. Air Jordan had taken 3 decades to reach that level, 3 decades of Michael Jordan being the most famous athlete on earth, 3 decades of cultural dominance. Kanye had done it in 6 years, starting from nothing. No other musician in history had ever come close to this level of wealth. Dr. Dre had sold Beats to Apple for $3 billion, but that was a one-time sale. He didn't retain an appreciating asset. Diddy, Jay-Z, Rihanna, they had all built impressive business empires. But none of them had achieved what Kanye achieved with Yeezy. Forbes, which had resisted calling Kanye a billionaire for years, partly because he kept inflating his own numbers and they couldn't verify his claims, finally admitted he had crossed the threshold. The highest-paid musician in 2020 wasn't Taylor Swift or Drake or The Weeknd. It was Kanye West, with an estimated income of $170 million. He had done it. The college dropout from Chicago's South Side had become the richest rapper in history, by a margin so large it was almost absurd. He wasn't just winning, he had changed the entire game. Every future artist negotiating a brand deal would use Kanye as the template. Ownership, royalties, creative control, he had proven it was possible. And then he destroyed it all. In October 2022, Kanye West, who had legally changed his name to Ye, went on a podcast and made a series of anti-Semitic comments. Over the following days and weeks, he doubled down. He posted more anti-Semitic content on social media. He wore a White Lives Matter shirt to a Paris fashion show. He suggested that slavery was a choice. The corporate world moved swiftly. On October 25, 2022, Adidas announced it was terminating its partnership with Kanye West immediately. Adidas does not tolerate anti-Semitism and any other sort of hate speech, the company stated. His recent comments and actions have been unacceptable, hateful, and dangerous. The speed of the corporate exodus was stunning. Within days, Gap had removed all Yeezy products from its stores and shut down the Yeezy Gap website. Balenciaga severed ties. Foot Locker pulled Yeezy shoes from its shelves. His talent agency, CAA, dropped him. His bank, J.P. Morgan Chase, reportedly asked him to close his accounts. Even his documentary deal with MRC was paused. His accountants at Armanino distanced themselves. Fashion houses that had once begged for his attention wouldn't take his calls. It was a corporate blacklisting of a scale rarely seen in modern business history. Overnight, Kanye West lost approximately $1.5 billion in net worth. Forbes immediately removed him from their billionaires list. His estimated net worth collapsed from around $2 billion to approximately $400 million, and even that figure was disputed. The company that had built his fortune, Adidas, announced it expected a $247 million hit to net income just from ending the partnership. In the first quarter of 2023 alone, Adidas lost 400 million euros. Their North American sales dropped 20%. Kanye West had been right about one thing all along. The Yeezy brand was enormously valuable. Its loss crippled one of the largest sportswear companies on earth. But the brand's value was inseparable from the man who created it. And when that man became radioactive, so did everything he touched. So what are the lessons here? Because this isn't just a story about one man's rise and fall. This is a case study in personal branding, its power, its potential, and its dangers. Lesson 1. Ownership beats endorsement. Kanye's genius wasn't in designing shoes. It was in structuring a deal where he owned the brand he was building. Every hour of work, every controversial statement, every headline, it all added value to something he personally controlled. If Kanye had taken Nike's original offer, flat fees, no ownership, he might have made $50, maybe $100 million over a decade. Instead, he built a multi-billion-dollar asset that he owned outright. That's the difference between getting paid and getting rich. If you work for someone else, even if you're getting a great salary, you're building their wealth, not yours. Every hour you put in, every success you contribute to, it adds to their equity. You get a paycheck, they get an appreciating asset. Kanye understood this instinctively. When Nike offered him a flat fee endorsement, he saw it for what it was, a job, a well-paying job, but still just a job. When Adidas offered him ownership and royalties, he saw something different, a stake in the game, a percentage of the upside, the chance to build something that would compound over time. This principle applies far beyond sneakers. Whether you're a software developer, a consultant, a creative professional, the question is always the same. Are you getting paid or are you building equity? Lesson 2. Scarcity creates value. Yeezy never flooded the market. Every release was limited. Every drop was an event. In a world of infinite choice and instant availability, artificial scarcity made people want the product more. This isn't just applicable to sneakers, it applies to any brand, any product, any personal career. What's rare is valuable. What's everywhere is ignored. Think about luxury brands like Hermes. A Birkin bag isn't expensive because the leather is magical. It's expensive because you can't just buy one. There's a wait list. There's an application process. The scarcity is the product. Yeezy operated on the same principle. By making the shoes hard to get, Kanye made them worth getting. Lesson 3. Personal brand is a double-edged sword. Kanye's personality was inseparable from Yeezy's value. His controversy, his confidence, his creative vision, they all drove interest in the brand. But that same inseparability meant that when Kanye's behavior became toxic, there was no firewall. The brand couldn't distance itself from its creator. They were the same thing. This is the danger of building a business around yourself. When you are the product, your personal failings become business failings. There's no board to fire you. There's no PR team that can truly separate your image from your company's image. Compare this to Apple. When Steve Jobs died, Apple continued. When he made controversial statements during his lifetime, Apple, the company, could maintain some separation. The brand was bigger than any one person. Yeezy was Kanye. There was no separation possible. That's what made it powerful, and ultimately, what made it vulnerable. Lesson 4. Talent without discipline is ultimately self-defeating. Kanye West is, by any reasonable measure, one of the most talented artists of his generation. His production changed hip-hop. His albums are studied in music schools. His fashion sense influenced an entire decade of streetwear. But talent without the wisdom to know when to stop talking, talent without the humility to recognize your own blind spots, talent without the discipline to protect what you've built. That kind of talent destroys as much as it creates. As of this recording, Kanye claims his net worth has rebounded to $2.77 billion, based on his ownership of the Yeezy trademark and his music catalog. Forbes disputes this, putting his actual net worth closer to $400 million. The truth is probably somewhere in between. What's certain is that he's no longer a billionaire by any conventional measure. The Adidas partnership is gone forever. The Gap partnership is gone. Most major brands won't touch him. And yet, he still owns the Yeezy name. He still has his music. He still has that restless, brilliant, deeply troubled mind. If there is anyone capable of rebuilding from nothing, it might be Kanye West. He's done it before. He survived a car crash that should have ended his career. He overcame an industry that refused to believe in him. He built something from nothing, repeatedly. But he's also shown he's capable of tearing down everything he builds. In many ways, Kanye West represents both the incredible potential and the catastrophic risk of extreme self-belief. That same confidence that allowed him to walk into record label meetings and insist he was going to be a star, even when everyone said otherwise, is the same confidence that led him to make statements so offensive that billion-dollar companies had no choice but to walk away. The same willingness to bet on himself that created Yeezy is the same willingness to bet on himself that destroyed it. There's a lesson in that paradox for anyone building a personal brand, for anyone pursuing ambitious goals. The traits that make you successful can also make you fail. The fuel that propels you forward can also burn everything around you. Kanye never learned where the line was, or maybe he knew and crossed it anyway. Maybe the same restlessness that couldn't be satisfied with being a producer, that couldn't be satisfied with Grammy-winning albums, that couldn't be satisfied with a billion-dollar sneaker empire, maybe that restlessness was always going to push him past the point of no return. That's the final lesson of Kanye West's story. Becoming a billionaire is hard. Staying one is harder. And the biggest threat to your success isn't your competition, isn't the market, isn't bad luck or economic downturns. The biggest obstacle isn't external, it's internal. It's the voice in your head that says, more, different, push harder, say what you think regardless of consequences. That voice can drive you to greatness. That same voice can drive you to ruin. Sometimes the biggest threat to your success is you. In the end, Kanye West's story isn't really a success story or a failure story. It's both. It's the story of what's possible when talent meets determination, meets the right business structure, and it's the story of what happens when all that success isn't enough, when the person at the center of the empire can't stop themselves from setting it on fire. Maybe he'll rebuild. Maybe he'll find a way to bring Yeezy back to its former glory. Or maybe the lesson here is that some things, once broken, can't be repaired. Either way, the art of making billions isn't just about business strategy. It's about knowing yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your blind spots. It's about building systems that protect you from your worst impulses. Kanye built an incredible system for making money. He never built a system for protecting himself from himself. If you found this story valuable, consider subscribing to The Art of Billions. We explore how the world's wealthiest people built their fortunes, the strategies, the sacrifices, and the cautionary tales. Next time, we're diving into another empire, another billionaire, another lesson in the art of making and keeping extraordinary wealth. Until then,